Sometimes life just feels deranged, like you're playing a part in a play written long before you were born. That's kind of how I felt, even at 24, living on my family's sprawling equestrian estate. It was gorgeous, don't get me wrong. Rolling green pastures, stables that looked like something out of a European painting, and horses that cost more than most people's houses. But it also felt like a gilded cage. All these silent expectations draped over everything, subtle as a whisper, but heavy as lead. My life was cushioned by wealth. Yes, but there was this underlying current of something missing, a hollow space I couldn't quite name. I'd made all the right choices, or at least the ones expected of me. Calculated and precise, but the satisfaction rarely lasted. One breezy afternoon, the kind where the air smells of freshly cut hay and damp earth, I decided to wander through the stables. It was a routine visit, mostly to check on my favorite mare, Serafina. That's when I saw her. Patricia. She was engrossed in her work, a quiet symphony of movement and focus. Her dark hair, thick and lustrous, often escaped its practical braid, framing a face that was, well, just beautiful. Not in the polished, magazine way I was used to seeing, but in a raw, almost elemental sense. There was a gentle strength etched around her eyes that held a depth I found instantly compelling, like looking into a very still, very old lake. Her hands, despite their obvious strength from years of working with horses, moved with a surprising grace as she meticulously cleaned tack. She was wearing simple, practical riding gear, devoid of any pretense, and it only accentuated the quiet resilience that seemed to radiate from her. I found myself just watching, which, for me, was unusual. I'm usually thinking 3 steps ahead, analyzing, planning. But with her, it was different. It was an unexpected, profound draw, a deviation from my typically composed and strategic nature. Like a tuning fork had suddenly hummed inside me, hitting a note I hadn't known existed. This wasn't about a plan, not yet. It was something far more primal, a recognition of something vital and unfamiliar. Eventually, our paths converged near Serafina's stall. I feigned a casual interest in the mare's training schedule, an easy opening. "Everything going well with Serafina?" I asked, my voice, I hoped, sounding appropriately detached. Patricia turned, her movements unhurried. "Yes, Mia. She's had a good session this morning. Her canter work is really coming along." Her voice was soft, even, with a slight, almost imperceptible lilt that suggested a certain musicality, even in a simple professional response. She offered a small, polite smile, but her eyes, those deep, arresting eyes, remained carefully guarded. It was clear she was all business, her demeanor reserved, yet impeccably polite. I noticed the careful way she held herself, the subtle distance she maintained. It wasn't aloofness, not exactly, but a kind of self-contained world she inhabited. My internal monologue, usually so rational, began to buzz with a different kind of energy. This wasn't just about curiosity. It was about an intense desire to understand the quiet strength she carried, to peel back the layers of that serene exterior. I sensed a carefully constructed emotional wall, and an intriguing challenge began to bloom in the quiet corners of my mind. It was clear then, I needed to know more about Patricia. A lot more. And I was already formulating a plan, however nascent, to bridge the vast, unspoken chasm between our vastly different worlds. The encounter with Patricia had lingered with me, a persistent hum beneath the surface of my usual composure. It wasn't just her physical beauty, though that was undeniable. It was the quiet confidence in her movements, the way she interacted with the horses, as if they were extensions of her own spirit. She was so real, so grounded, a stark contrast to the often superficial world I inhabited. That pull, that unexpected resonance, felt too significant to ignore. So I started frequenting the stables. More often than usual, that is. I fashioned a renewed, if somewhat sudden, enthusiasm for equestrian pursuits, a convenient guise for my true objective. It wasn't a lie precisely. I did enjoy the horses. But now, there was an added, far more compelling reason for my presence. My observations of Patricia intensified. I watched her from a distance, absorbing every detail. The way her brow furrowed in concentration as she adjusted a stirrup, the gentle stroke of her hand against a horse's neck, the efficient rhythm of her daily tasks. She moved with a purpose, a quiet focus that spoke volumes about her dedication. Her dark hair, often escaping its braid, would catch the sunlight, creating a sort of halo around her, and I found myself inexplicably drawn to the subtle dips and curves of her posture, the effortless strength in her lean frame. There was an elegance in her practicality, a natural grace that needed no adornment. I noticed the way she'd murmur to the horses, soft words I couldn't quite catch, but the horses seemed to understand, nudging their heads into her hand with a trust that spoke volumes. It made me wonder what secrets she kept, what dreams lay beneath that serene exterior. I started to subtly orchestrate situations for brief, seemingly accidental conversations. I'd linger near the tack room when I knew she'd be there, or ask a specific, pointed question about a horse I knew she was particularly fond of. My goal was to create openings, to gently chip away at the professional distance she so skillfully maintained. Through these carefully engineered encounters, I began to learn more. I picked up bits and pieces about her dedication to the animals, the long hours she kept, the sheer physical and mental demand of her work. I learned she was an orphan, a fact delivered without a trace of self-pity, just a quiet statement of her reality. Her life was defined by the demanding yet fulfilling rhythm of the stables, a stark contrast to my own existence, which often felt like a series of scheduled appointments. What struck me was that despite her difficult beginnings, she carried no obvious bitterness. Instead, there was a profound strength, a quiet resilience. Yet, beneath that, I discerned a subtle vulnerability, a flicker in her eyes when she spoke of her aspirations for a young colt, or a slight hesitation when a particularly personal question arose. This only deepened my fascination. She was a woman of quiet depths, and I felt an undeniable urge to explore every single one of them. I began to employ subtle gestures, carefully designed to convey my interest without being overtly intrusive. A sustained gaze that held a question she couldn't quite decipher, but that invited her to wonder. A thoughtful inquiry about a challenging aspect of her day, showing I paid attention, that I genuinely saw her. Or, one afternoon, I left a specifically chosen equestrian publication, one I knew contained an article relevant to a horse she was working with, on a table near her usual workspace. It was a small, almost imperceptible act, meant to demonstrate a gentle, genuine care and respect, slowly encouraging her to relax her professional guard. I watched her reactions, meticulously cataloging them. A brief flush that touched her cheeks when our eyes met a moment too long. A momentary softening of her steadfast gaze when I offered a genuine compliment about her handling of a particularly difficult horse. These were minute details, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but to me, they were potent indicators. They told me that my presence, my quiet persistence, was registering. They signaled a nascent curiosity within her, a tiny crack in the formidable wall she had built around herself. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was on the right track. My presence at the stables became less of an anomaly and more of a quiet fixture. I maintained the facade of equestrian enthusiasm, but the truth was, my focus had narrowed to one person: Patricia. My efforts continued, persistent yet patient, like a sculptor gently chipping away at marble. I found more extended opportunities to be in her proximity, often under the guise of learning about horse care. I'd ask her to walk me through the nuances of recognizing subtle lameness or the intricacies of saddle fitting. She'd explain, her voice calm and instructional, and I'd listen, not just to the words, but to the rhythm of her breathing, the subtle inflections, trying to glean more than just practical knowledge. During these times, I began to share carefully selected anecdotes about my own life. Nothing too revealing, mind you, but stories that were often self-deprecating, perhaps a humorous mishap from a childhood riding lesson, or a moment where my privilege had ironically led to an awkward situation. My aim was to foster a sense of shared humanity, to show her that despite our vastly different worlds, there were common threads of experience, moments of vulnerability. I wanted to build a bridge of mutual understanding, one small brick at a time. I'd watch her for a reaction, a faint smile, a softening of her shoulders, a momentary flicker of shared amusement in her deep eyes. Each one was a victory, a subtle sign that the wall was, however incrementally, beginning to yield. As our rapport deepened, I started to discern subtle indicators of past emotional wounds in Patricia. They weren't obvious, no dramatic pronouncements, but small tells that spoke volumes to my trained eye. There was a fleeting hesitancy, a slight recoil when an unexpected loud noise would echo through the stable, a flinch almost too quick to catch. Her posture would tighten almost imperceptibly when a conversation veered too close to personal questions about her history or family. It wasn't an intentional evasion, but a subtle guarding, a withdrawal into herself, like a turtle pulling into its shell. These observations, rather than deterring me, only deepened my resolve. They painted a picture of a woman who had learned to navigate the world with a certain caution, who carried an unspoken weight. I internally resolved to approach Patricia's emotional landscape with utmost sensitivity and patience, to be a source of safety and stability, not another threat to her peace. My attraction wasn't just physical or intellectual anymore. It was an acknowledgement of her strength and her fragility, a fierce desire to protect that innocent core I sense within her. Patricia, for her part, wasn't oblivious to the shift in our interactions. I could see the signs, subtle as they were. She often seemed lost in thought, her gaze distant, even when performing routine tasks. She'd sometimes pause mid-sentence, as if collecting her thoughts, or maybe her feelings. She was sensing the growing intensity of my attention, I was sure, and the unfamiliar nature of her own responses. I could tell she was grappling with something new, something that challenged her carefully constructed world. She subtly attempted to maintain professional distance, her actions gentle, yet consistently redirecting any conversation that felt too personal back to the horses or stable duties. It wasn't a rejection, not truly. I understood it as a natural defense mechanism, a woman of deep innocence encountering emotions she likely hadn't processed before. Her initial resistance, her quiet attempts to keep me at arm's length, reflected her inherent innocence and, perhaps, a profound trepidation about venturing into unknown emotional territory. I knew she wasn't trying to push me away out of malice. She was likely trying to understand what was happening within herself and how to navigate this unfamiliar territory. I acknowledged the internal conflict she must be experiencing, recognizing that her heart, though pure, was not yet ready to fully open. But I was patient. I was always patient when something truly mattered. And Patricia mattered. More than I could have anticipated. The bond between us, though still largely unspoken, continued to deepen through these quiet interactions. It was like a slow-burning ember, steadily growing warmer. Then came an afternoon that marked a significant shift. A young mare, Folly, known for her skittish temperament, became agitated in her stall. A sudden, unexpected storm had rolled in, the wind rattling the stable doors, and a distant clap of thunder sent Folly into a frenzy. She began to rear, whinnying in panic, her hooves striking against the stall walls with alarming force. Patricia, who had been in an adjacent stall, reacted instantly. She moved with an innate understanding, a practiced calmness that was astonishing to witness. She spoke to Folly in low, soothing tones, trying to approach, but the mare was too far gone in her fear. Patricia's usual composure, while still present, was strained. I saw a flicker of worry in her eyes, a tightening around her mouth that revealed the underlying stress. This wasn't just a job for her. These animals were her life, and Folly's distress was her own. I, too, had been nearby, observing. In that moment, instinct took over. My usual detached demeanor vanished. I didn't think. I simply acted. I moved swiftly to the feed room, grabbed a bucket of oats, and approached Folly's stall from a different angle than Patricia. My voice, usually precise, softened, adopting a calming rhythm I hadn't realized I possessed. Easy, Folly, I murmured, my eyes fixed on the mare's frantic ones. It's just the wind, girl. Just the wind. Between Patricia's practiced soothing and my offering of the oats, Folly gradually began to calm. Her frantic movements lessened, her whinnies subsided to soft snorts. She hesitantly dipped her nose into the bucket, the familiar taste a small anchor in her panic. The storm passed as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind a profound quiet. In the aftermath, as Folly gently munched her oats, a palpable stillness settled between Patricia and me. Patricia leaned against the stall door, her shoulders slumping slightly, a silent testament to the adrenaline that had just coursed through her. She was quiet, her gaze fixed on the mare, but I saw the subtle shakiness in her hands. She gets like that sometimes, Patricia said, her voice soft, almost a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might reignite Folly's fear. Doesn't remember her damn much, I think. Always a bit adrift. The words hung in the air, weighted with more than just concern for the horse. Adrift, she'd said. It was a brief, poignant detail, a rare glimpse into a deeper, personal resonance. Was she speaking of Folly, or subtly of herself? I didn't press. I simply listened, my presence a quiet anchor in the suddenly vulnerable space between us. You handled that well, Mia, she added, her voice still quiet, but with a note of genuine surprise. She looked at me then, her deep eyes meeting mine. The usual reserve was gone, replaced by a raw honesty. For a long, silent moment, our gazes locked. It was an intensely emotional scene, not because of what was said, but because of what was felt. There was a mutual recognition of something shared, a moment of profound trust and unspoken understanding passing between us. My assistance hadn't been calculated. It had been an instinctive response, and it had forged a connection that transcended our carefully constructed roles. I felt the profound, almost palpable, strengthening of our bond in that quiet aftermath. Patricia's gaze lingered on me a moment longer than usual, a nascent curiosity replacing her typical reserve, a flicker of something new in her depths. It was a silent acknowledgement, a tiny crack in her emotional armor, and in that moment, I knew we had crossed an invisible threshold. That shared moment with Folly, the quiet vulnerability Patricia had shown, had altered the landscape between us. The ember had truly begun to glow. I sensed the shift in our dynamic, a subtle easing in her presence, when I was near. This was my cue. I began to extend invitations for Patricia to join me outside the confines of a stable. My approach was cautious, always framed as something casual or professionally relevant. The first was an equestrian art exhibit at a gallery downtown, framed as an opportunity to see how artists interpreted the beauty of horses. Another time, it was a quiet dinner at a local farm-to-table restaurant, presented as a chance to discuss some new nutritional supplements for the mares. I meticulously ensured Patricia's comfort and sense of belonging during these excursions. I'd subtly guide the conversation away from anything that might make her feel out of place or too exposed to my more opulent world. I observed her reactions, the slight widening of her eyes at a striking piece of art, the thoughtful way she considered the menu, the quiet enjoyment evident in her posture. Patricia, for her part, found herself in a profound state of emotional confusion. I could see it in the way she would sometimes stare out into the distance, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. She was increasingly drawn to my consistent kindness, my unwavering patience, the genuine interest I showed in her world. It was a novel experience for her. She grappled with unfamiliar feelings, an attraction that challenged her previous understanding of herself and the trajectory of her life. Her innocent perspective meant this type of connection, this deep, burgeoning emotional and personal pull, was entirely new territory. I imagined it must have felt like navigating a beautiful, yet bewildering, labyrinth. She was so unused to being the focus of such intense, yet gentle, attention. During one such outing, a quiet evening walk after that farm-to-table dinner, a moment of significant emotional intimacy unfolded. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and late-blooming jasmine. We were talking, or rather, I was mostly listening. Patricia, feeling safe in my presence, perhaps even a little emboldened by the soft twilight, shared a more substantial narrative from her past. It wasn't a dramatic tale, but a quiet sorrow she had long carried. The loneliness of growing up without family, the constant hustle to prove her worth, the lingering feeling of being an outsider. She spoke of the horses as her only true companions for so many years, her voice almost a whisper, laden with a tenderness that brought a sting to my own eyes. I listened with unwavering attention, my gaze steady on her, offering quiet understanding and a steady, unwavering presence. I didn't offer solutions or platitudes. I simply was there. My silence was not empty. It was full of profound empathy, my attentiveness conveying an unwavering acceptance of all she had endured, all she was. I subtly communicated my feelings without spoken words, perhaps through a sustained, meaningful gaze that held both tenderness and a profound yearning, a silent question about the future, a deep well of emotion. My hand, without conscious thought, found its way to her arm, a gentle, comforting touch, purely an act of connection and reassurance. In that quiet, powerful moment, I saw a subtle shift in Patricia's expression. Her eyes, those beautiful, deep pools, met mine, and for the first time, I saw not just curiosity or trepidation, but a glimmer of conscious acknowledgement. It was in this moment that Patricia began to consciously acknowledge the undeniable stirring of her own heart towards me, albeit with a deep sense of trepidation and wonder. The silence between us stretched, filled with the unspoken weight of burgeoning affection, a shared breath held in anticipation. She didn't pull away, and that, for me, was everything. The weight of our unspoken feelings had become almost palpable, a silent current flowing between us. I was acutely aware of Patricia's internal struggle, her innocent heart processing emotions entirely new to her. The time for subtle hints and gentle suggestions had passed. It was time for honesty. I chose a private, serene setting on the estate for this conversation. Not in my lavish drawing room, but by the pastures, as the sun began its slow descent, casting long, golden shadows across the fields. The air was soft, carrying the faint scent of evening dew and distant honeysuckle, a perfect backdrop for something as delicate and profound as what I intended to say. Patricia was with me, ostensibly admiring a group of yearlings playfully chasing each other. "Patricia," I began, my voice calm, but with an underlying current of earnestness that surprised even me. "There's something I need to tell you. Something important." She turned, her movements still unhurried, but I caught the subtle tightening of her shoulders, a tell that she knew this wasn't going to be about horse feed or training schedules. Her eyes, beautiful and a little wide, held a question. I spoke from a place of deep sincerity, choosing my words with care, not to overwhelm her, but to convey the raw truth of my feelings. "From the first time I saw you, there was something different, something compelling. You are unlike anyone I've ever met. Your strength, your kindness, your dedication, it truly humbles me." I paused, letting the words settle in the twilight air. "I've tried to understand it, this pull I feel towards you. It's not something I planned, not something I ever anticipated, but it's real. And it's profound." I took a breath, meeting her gaze directly. "I'm attracted to you, Patricia, more than I can easily express. And I believe I'm falling in love with you." Her expression was a mixture of shock and something like wonder. She didn't speak, but her gaze was fixed on mine, absorbing every word. I could see the confusion, the fear, and perhaps a nascent hope swirling in those deep eyes. "I know this might be new for you," I continued, acknowledging her unspoken bewilderment. "And I know our worlds seem very different. But those differences, I've come to realize, are what make this so vivid. You've subtly, yet fundamentally, altered my world. You've shown me a kind of grace, a kind of truth I hadn't seen before." I stepped a little closer, not invading her space, but closing the distance that had always been between us. "I'm not asking you for anything you're not ready for. I simply want you to know how I feel. And I want you to know that I offer you not just my heart, but the unwavering stability and security of my presence. Whatever fears you might have, whatever questions, I promise to face them with you, with patience and with honesty. Patricia was silent for a long moment, the only sound the distant whinny of a horse and the soft rustle of leaves. Her chest rose and fell with a visible tremor. Then, her voice, soft but steady, broke the quiet. "Mia," she began, her gaze still unwavering. I don't know what to say. This is all so new. I've never felt anything like this before. It's frightening." The last word was almost a whisper, raw with vulnerability. "I understand," I said, my voice gentle. "And it's all right to be frightened. What we're feeling, it's powerful. But you don't have to face it alone. I'm here." She looked at me then, a profound sense of acceptance dawning in her eyes. The trepidation was still there, but it was now overlaid with a profound wonder. It was a silent, intense conversation, conveyed through unspoken emotions. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Patricia leaned slightly closer. Her movement was a quiet capitulation, an acceptance of her own burgeoning feelings, an unspoken consent. In a moment of quiet, emotionally charged closeness, her hand, hesitant but firm, reached out and gently rested on my arm. It was a brief, chaste touch, a confirmation of our profound emotional bond, conveyed through unspoken consent and shared vulnerability. No words were needed. In that soft, evening light, under the vast, quiet sky, our unspoken bond solidified into something tangible, something real. The quiet acknowledgement by the pastors marked a tender new beginning. Our relationship blossomed with an exquisite tenderness, my continued patience a gentle current guiding Patricia through unfamiliar emotional landscapes. We spent hours simply being together, sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes talking about everything and nothing. I reveled in the subtle shifts in Patricia, a lightness in her step, a more frequent, genuine smile that reached her eyes, softening their deep gaze. I gently encouraged Patricia to explore new facets of her own world, introducing her to aspects of my privileged life without ever overshadowing her inherent identity or roots. We visited art galleries, attended classical music concerts, and even took short trips to quiet coastal towns. I watched her absorb these new experiences with a captivating blend of innocence and intelligent curiosity. She was never overwhelmed, always herself, and that endeared her to me even more. I wanted her to see the beauty in my world, but only if it resonated with the beauty already within her. But of course, not all beauty comes without its shadows. My family, with their intricate network of connections and unspoken expectations, began to sense the depth and seriousness of my new relationship. It started subtly, with veiled questions at dinner parties, a raised eyebrow from my mother when I spoke of spending more time at the stables, or a pointed comment from my father about my newfound dedication to the equestrian arts. Their disapproval, initially just subtle hints, gradually evolved into more overt expressions of concern and expectation. They saw Patricia as an anomaly, an outsider, someone who didn't fit into the meticulously crafted tapestry of their lives. "She's a lovely girl, Mia," my mother once remarked, her tone sweet as poison, "but perhaps not quite suited to our world, darling. There are certain expectations, you know." This external pressure created a palpable tension, a persistent hum beneath the surface of our quiet joy. It tested not only my burgeoning independence, but also Patricia's nascent trust in our bond. I could see it in her eyes sometimes, a fleeting return of that guardedness, a quiet concern that flickered when I relayed a particularly pointed comment from my family. But she never wavered. She listened, she held my hand, and her quiet strength fortified me. I stood firm, defending Patricia and the integrity of our connection with resolute determination. My parents' expectations, once so influential, now felt like trivialities compared to the profound connection I had found. I wasn't rebellious in an overt, dramatic sense. Rather, I was quietly, unyieldingly defiant. This was my life, my heart, and Patricia was irrevocably a part of it. Beyond navigating the external challenges, I actively supported Patricia in gently confronting or understanding aspects of her past trauma. I didn't push, never forced. Instead, I created a safe space. Sometimes, it was as simple as listening without judgment when a memory surfaced. Other times, I suggested discreet resources, a kind, empathetic therapist should she ever feel inclined to talk to someone impartial. I just provided an unwavering, stable, and loving environment where Patricia felt safe to truly heal, to unpack the quiet burdens she had carried for so long. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Patricia began to blossom. She shed layers of past hurt, like a snake shedding old skin. Her laughter became more frequent, more unrestrained. Her opinions, once reserved, were now expressed with a newfound confidence. She started sharing more of her dreams, her aspirations beyond the stables. She was becoming more authentically open, not just with me, but with the world around her. Seeing her find this new freedom, this new strength within herself, was a profound joy, a testament to the healing power of love, and a beautiful affirmation of the path we had chosen together. The years that followed were a testament to the profound, quiet transformation in both of us. Our relationship became the crucible in which we each forged stronger, more authentic selves. For me, the rebellious facade I'd inherited from a life of expectations gradually shed away. I embraced a more genuine, purposeful existence, driven by the profound love I shared with Patricia. My ambition sharpened, but my heart softened, guided by a sense of meaning that had once been elusive. Patricia, fortified by my unwavering support and belief, truly found her authentic voice. The quiet, reserved girl I'd met by the stables was still there, but now she was layered with confidence, a radiant self-possession that was breathtaking to behold. She strengthened her inherent self-worth, no longer defined by the shadows of her past or the circumstances of her beginnings. Her innocence remained, but it was now tempered with wisdom and a resilient strength that shone brightly. Inspired by my confidence and her own deepening sense of self, Patricia began to envision new opportunities. She wasn't content to simply manage the stables. She wanted to grow them, to innovate. She started proposing new breeding programs, more efficient training methodologies, and even conceptualized a community outreach program for underprivileged children to learn about horses. With my thoughtful strategic advice and quiet backing, resources, connections, silent encouragement, Patricia embarked on projects that highlighted her innate talents and leadership potential. It was a beautiful thing to witness, embodying my continued care and profound investment in her growth. I saw the passion in her eyes, the joy in her achievements, and knew that supporting her dreams was now an integral part of my own. Of course, the unspoken tension with my family simmered. It was an elephant in the room that needed to be addressed directly. One crisp autumn evening, with a scent of wood smoke in the air, I decided it was time. I gathered my parents and my siblings in the grand sitting room, the very heart of the family's formal existence. Patricia stood by my side, her hand subtly in mine, a silent, unwavering presence. She emanated a calm strength that both surprised and unnerved my family. "Mother, father," I began, my voice clear and steady, devoid of the defensiveness I might have once exhibited. "I've asked you here because there are things we need to be clear about." I looked from one face to another, my gaze unwavering. Patricia is my partner. Not a friend, not a stable manager, but my life partner. She is the woman I love, and the woman I choose to build my future with. My mother's mouth thinned, and my father's jaw tightened. "Mia, darling, we've always wanted your happiness," my mother started, her voice laced with that familiar, saccharine concern. "But there are expectations, a legacy to uphold." I cut her off gently but firmly. "My happiness is with Patricia, and my legacy, as far as I'm concerned, will be built on love, integrity, and authenticity, not on outdated societal norms or inherited titles. Patricia has brought more light, more truth, into my life than anything else ever has." I looked at Patricia, and a soft, genuine smile touched my lips. She is everything to me, and our connection is not up for discussion or approval. It simply is. Patricia squeezed my hand, a subtle gesture of support and shared resolve. Her gaze, warm and steady, met my parents with an undeniable quiet dignity. It was a decisive, yet calm, confrontation. I articulated with quiet authority that Patricia was my chosen partner, irrespective of their approval or societal expectations. The room was silent for a long moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. This moment underscored our united front, the enduring depth of our commitment, and highlighted the transformation in both of us. We had faced the storm together and emerged stronger, standing as one, ready to forge our own path, hand in hand. Years unfurled, each one weaving another rich thread into the tapestry of our shared life. Looking back, from the vantage point of a life deeply intertwined, I could trace the quiet strength and enduring love that had defined our journey. Patricia was no longer the reserved, innocent girl I first encountered, her heart carefully guarded. She was a confident, radiant woman, her deep eyes now sparkling with a warmth and joy that had once been only nascent. She was deeply loved, and loving in return, her affection a steady, luminous beacon in my world. I, too, had undergone a profound transformation. The hollow spaces in my gilded cage had been filled, not with superficial pursuits, but with the profound purpose and authentic self I had discovered alongside Patricia. She had taught me to see beauty in simplicity, strength in vulnerability, and the truest wealth in genuine connection. My life, once dictated by societal scripts, was now written by the quiet, powerful rhythm of our shared days. Together, we had meticulously woven a shared world, seamlessly blending our distinct backgrounds into a rich, harmonious life. The grandeur of the estate, once a symbol of expectation, now felt like a home, a sanctuary we had built together. Patricia's innate connection to the land and the animals thrived, evolving into an innovative, sustainable equestrian program that was respected far beyond our estate. My strategic mind found its greatest fulfillment in supporting her vision, in seeing her dreams take tangible form. We had honored both our individual identities and the profound, unbreakable connection that bound us. On a late afternoon, the kind where the setting sun painted the pastures in hues of gold and rose, I found Patricia near the paddock, watching a young foal nuzzle its mother. Her dark hair, now streaked with a few silver threads, was still often escaping its braid, a familiar, comforting sight. She looked up as I approached, her smile effortless and full of a quiet contentment that mirrored my own. We stood together, simply watching, my hand finding hers, fingers intertwining naturally, a gesture of years of silent understanding. The air smelled of evening dew and the sweet earth, a scent that now felt inextricably linked to her, to us. "Remember that storm, Mia?" Patricia murmured, her voice soft, recalling the day Folly had panicked. "It feels like a lifetime ago." "It does," I agreed, my gaze sweeping across the peaceful scene before us. "And yet, it also feels like yesterday." She leaned her head gently against my shoulder, a quiet affirmation of our closeness. "I never imagined any of this," she whispered, her voice filled with a profound gratitude. "That I would find such beauty, such love." I tightened my grip on her hand. "Nor I, my love," I replied, my voice a little rough with emotion. "You opened my eyes to a world I didn't even know I was missing. A world of real feeling, real connection." In that serene, reflective scene, watching Patricia gracefully interact with the horses, bathed in the golden afternoon light, my inner monologue tied together all the intricate threads of our journey. We had navigated the complexities of different worlds, weathered the storms of external disapproval, and healed the quiet wounds of the past. Our relationship stood as a testament to understanding, mutual respect, and an unbreakable bond forged through adversity and unwavering commitment. We had built a life, brick by brick, moment by moment, on a foundation of genuine affection and unwavering support. The future stretched before us, an open landscape, filled with the promise of more shared, quiet moments, more dreams realized, more simple, profound joys. It was a life beyond my wildest calculations, a love that transcended all expectations, and had forged a future filled with a deep, abiding meaning. We had found our forever, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of two hearts beating as one, forever entwined.